Welcome to the Blackhawks Breakaway Podcast, brought to you by Toyota. Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. Find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. With Charlie Roumeliotis, I am Pat Boyle. We're coming to you from the CHSN podcast studios at the United Center. Unfortunately, we're going to talk about a three-game losing skid, the longest streak of the season. And they're all unique losses. You have a game against Seattle where you were up 2-0 in the third period. You had an absolute drubbing in Buffalo, 9-3. And then against the best team in the National Hockey League, you lost 1-0. Overall takeaway, want to break them down one by one? How do you want to do it?
Yeah, it feels like you mentioned it. Each game was very unique. The Seattle game, Hawks are up 2-0. They allow 3 unanswered goals, but it was the controversial no call on the Connor Bedard breakaway that led to an unsportsmanlike. Seattle capitalized on the power play. Hawks probably get a point out of that game if there is, even if it's just a no call, it probably gets into overtime and maybe it's a different feeling. And then I wonder how much of that, the emotion from that game carried over into Buffalo, where they were still kind of stewing on it. Hawks obviously had Arvid Soderblom in net, not Spencer Knight. Second of a back-to-back. Third game in 4 days for the Blackhawks. I mean, that was one of those games from start to finish. It was just ugly. And one of those games that I think I asked Jeff Blashill in my pregame interview with him, is that a game where you just flush the tape in the toilet and don't even look at it? Because the body of work up to that point was a lot of positives, or were there some habits in that game where it was a little concerning? And you kind of said like a little bit of both. Like you want to flush the frustration of it, but maybe the X's and O's part, you want to break down what exactly went wrong. And then the Colorado game on Sunday night, that was easily the best of the 3 games I thought that the Blackhawks had, given the opponent, given the circumstances. That was the first time all season long that Colorado had scored fewer than 2 goals in a hockey game. And so defensively, the Hawks were right there. It was weird that they couldn't generate offensively, though. Yeah. Like that's where Colorado has taken significant strides, where they're a team that they can win those low scoring affairs too.
So I think that goes to my takeaway from the Buffalo experience. Yeah, the loss to Seattle was tough, being up, playing really well in the second period, which has not been their MO this season. Having that 2-goal cushion, and then kind of having 2 goals scored against you. One, you thought there was going to be an icing call. There wasn't, waved off. And then you had, ping-ponging off, players in front of the net into the back of the net. And then you had the no call on Bedard and the penalty that was called. We'll get into referees because it's been it's been crazy. Some of the calls and some of the things that have happened, rescinding penalties. It's been wild to say the least. But the Buffalo experience was the first time this season where the Blackhawks were playing the second game of a back-to-back. They're going to have 12 of them, 11 left. And primarily they're a young team. And they got into Buffalo to their hotel around 3 a.m. And again, they've had, other than the long road trip and that 12-day road trip, they've had a pretty favorable schedule. They've had no back-to-backs up until last week, which I've got to think they were the last team in the NHL to experience.
Feels like they're going to pay for that somewhere down the road.
Somewhere those 11 are not going to be friendly. Primarily a young team dealing with just getting acclimated to the NHL schedule. And I talked to Bedard a little bit about it today. And I said, you're in year 3 of it. So you've had 2 years to navigate through. And I said, so are you talking to some of the players like Frank Nazar and others more that are going through this the first time like you did? And do you share some insight? He said, absolutely, and it goes back to the training in the offseason, but it goes back to the things that we've talked about on this podcast, not staying out on the ice all the time, how to take care of yourself, rest. And then we talked to Blashill about it. And it's when you don't have your A game. We always talked about it from a team perspective. When you don't have an A game, how can you win with your B- or C+ as a team? You boil that down, it goes to the individual as well, right? So you go to Buffalo, you're your body's not feeling great. You maybe are lacking sleep, and maybe there is a little bit of a hangover from the Seattle come from behind victory the night before. And then you try to do some things that are out of your comfort zone. It's okay, as Blashill said, to finish your shift and it be a tie.
Right.
You know, and it sounds so simple, but I think when you've got a young team, primarily a young team, and you're missing guys like Foligno who might remind a young team of the trap that they're heading into or a possible roadblock that they're hitting in a situation like that. And then you get behind and then you're trying to do things to make things up, and you end up hurting yourself more and more. So while you said Colorado, it sounded like Colorado won a game in Nashville with their B game, and they won one in Chicago the next night with their B-ish game.
Yeah, Steve Conrad brought up a really good point on the post-game show, because I asked him about back-to-backs when he was a player, and those back-to-backs when you're traveling from one destination to another and you're getting in late at 2, 3 in the morning. He said it always threw me off a little bit because you would sleep in a little bit, you would wake up, and then you can't get a pregame nap in because you've just slept into kind of the afternoon, right? And so then there's just like hours of just waiting for the game to roll around. Whereas when you're at home, you go to morning skate, you do your thing at the rink, you go home, you take a nap, you wake up, and you just head straight to the rink, right? And so there's a routine there. But when it's the second of a back-to-back, you're kind of just like waiting around for the game after, sleeping into the morning. And so, and even, like individuals trying to get their bodies ready to play in the second of a back-to-back. I think that's why we're seeing some NHL teams start to play their starting goaltender in the second of a back-to-back, because they know that the guys in front of them are not going to be as 100%.
Makes sense.
Right?
We saw that last night.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
Colorado.
With Wedgwood, correct. And so Colorado said, we're going to play our backup in Nashville. We're going to get our starter in the second one.
That's a great point, because we always used to think that you put your starter against the best team, the better team.
Right.
And then, we always said, do you feel slighted if you're that team that gets the backup?
Right.
But when you look at it from that perspective of where the team in front of that goalie is at, that makes sense to me.
And we were talking to Jeff Blashill on Sunday morning about the Buffalo game. Like, was there any consideration to pulling Arvid Soderblom after things kind of went off the rails? Not in the first period, but in the second period when they scored 2 goals in 8 seconds. Hawks go down 5-1, right? And the Hawks call a timeout in that moment.
Yeah.
But you could see Knight go to the locker room, and it looked like the Hawks were about to make a goalie change. Well, I guess Jeff told the Blackhawks, the players, I'm not making a goalie change. This is not part of the cards tonight. So Jeff was not communicating to the players or to Arvid, hey, you're going to wear this. I think Jeff's mentality at that point was, it's 5-1. It's in the second period. We need Spencer fresh for Sunday.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that Jeff Blashill learned under John Cooper in Tampa Bay, is when he was very cognizant of Andrei Vasilevsky's workload. And so when Vasilevsky was not starting on a given night, he was not going to go in unless things went totally sideways or
injury.
Or if there was a game like things got out of hand maybe early in the first period where there was still an opportunity to salvage the game. Maybe that's when, but the situation like the Buffalo game, Hawks are down 5-1. It's in the second period. The last thing you want is on Spencer Knight's off day, the second of a back-to-back, you throw him in there, he's cold, pulls a soft tissue, and and that like there's just no point. So the Hawks are just saying like, all right, we just got to ride.
Or he's less than himself on Sunday for the best team in the NHL.
100%. And you knew that. And again, Spencer Knight, this is his first year as a full-time starter.
Yeah.
So you don't want to overwork him when he's already being not overworked, but he's handling more than he usually is accustomed to.
More of his workload than he's ever had in his NHL career.
Correct.
No, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, I think, on top of this team getting acclimated to, trying to win a grinded out type game, it's also the injuries have been been popping up quite a bit, and it's showing you, the lack of depth that this team has, and the margin for error that they have when they lose a Burakovsky, when they lose a Dickinson, when they lose a Bertuzzi.
Yeah, Frank Nazar.
And it's all happened, and Mikheyev and Foligno, and it's all happened over about a 3-week period. There's been some overlap with some of those injuries. So, taking nothing away from the construction or anything like that, I just think like they are exceeding expectations, or have exceeded expectations quite a bit, probably playing maybe better than anybody expected. But when you start taking some of the key components away, they don't quite have what it takes to fill those gaps.
Yeah, and it rearranges the deck, and there's no consistency with the lines. And even some of the injured players that have returned, it feels like they've returned just maybe a tad early, and then they're not themselves. Like I think of Jason Dickinson, the first time he got hurt, he tried to return, wasn't himself, re-injured it. Then he's like, all right, I got to shut myself down for a month to make sure that I get healthy. Or Ilya Mikheyev, when he suffered that shoulder injury, when he took that big hit in the LA game, I think he missed 2 games. But in the first few games after that, he didn't look like himself. So it kind of looked like he was still muscling through the injury. And I could probably say the same for Frank Nazar. Like, I was surprised that he returned when he did, because in the practice before the game that he returned, he definitely still looked like he was laboring. And the Hawks wouldn't have him out there if there's a possibility of him re-injuring himself. So at this point, it feels like a pain tolerance thing. And I still think Nazar is trying to muscle through an injury as well, because he hasn't looked quite like himself the last several games. I know he's picked up an assist in 4 straight, but just from a driving play standpoint, he hasn't been the same. So I think he's still battling through it too.
And it kind of goes back to the grinding out and getting acclimated to the NHL. Like in the AHL or at Michigan, you have 4 or 5 days to recuperate between games. You don't have that luxury in the NHL. So he's grinding through, not being 100%. He's grinding through the workload of an NHL schedule and trying to figure out how to play when you're less than 100%, which everybody is, just to varying degrees.
Right. I think I might have said this on the last podcast, but I think Alex Vlasic was dealing with an injury either last year or the year prior. And it was kind of an annoying injury that he was trying to work through. And there was a moment where he was considering, he's like, do I sit for this? Do I keep trying to muscle? And he's like, well, part of the learning process for me is I got to learn how to play through this, because if this is the playoffs, I'm not going to feel 100%, right? So you got to learn how to just be uncomfortable not feeling 100% all the time.
Connor Bedard drew the matchup of Nathan MacKinnon on Sunday night, and you may look at that in a lot. First of all, what a step that is in respect for what Bedard is able to do. A year ago, we probably would not be having this conversation on the podcast. I think it goes to the commitment, the overall development of his 200-foot game, his improvement in all areas away from the puck, his speed factor, his improvement at the dot, you name it. And he held his own pretty well against Nathan MacKinnon.
He did well, and I found it interesting that Connor drew that matchup. Hawks were the home team, so they get the last change. So I saw the opening night, or the starting lineups. Colorado throws out MacKinnon, Makar. Hawks counter with Connor Bedard. And typically that's a matchup Jason Dickinson draws. Like in the last couple years, Dickinson has done a really nice job neutralizing Nathan MacKinnon. I think there was a game last year where MacKinnon was a -4 against Chicago, and Dickinson was unbelievable in that game.
I do remember that.
But because Dickinson was returning from an injury, that was his first game back in 11 games. You missed a month with the injury. I think the Hawks were like, let's give this responsibility to Connor and see how he handles it. And I thought it was interesting that Kyle Dubas was in attendance, the Pittsburgh Penguins president/GM, also part of Team Canada's management group for the Olympics. A few games earlier, Don Sweeney was in attendance, the Boston Bruins general manager and the assistant GM for Team Canada. What that tells me is Team Canada is seriously considering Connor Bedard for their Olympic roster. That doesn't mean that he's got an inside track, but they are really weighing this. And I thought maybe part of giving Connor Bedard the MacKinnon matchup was to see if he can handle the defensive responsibility. And don't underestimate, too, the relationship that Jeff Blashill has with John Cooper, who he was there with for 3 years as an assistant coach. I know they talk fairly frequently, and John Cooper is the head coach for Team Canada for the Olympics. So I imagine this is like a real internal discussion for Team Canada on whether or not to consider Bedard. So here are the numbers from Sunday night's game, okay? Bedard was Nathan MacKinnon. He had 20 minutes and 36 seconds of even strength ice time against Chicago. Connor Bedard was on the ice for 12:40 of those 20:36, okay? When MacKinnon was on the ice against Bedard, the Blackhawks led 18-15 in shot attempts, 8-4 in shots on goal, 10-6 scoring chances, high danger chances, 4-0, all in favor of Chicago. When MacKinnon was on the ice without Bedard out there, Colorado led 13-7 in shot attempts, 5-2 in shots on goal, and then scoring chances and high danger chances were even, 5-5, 3-3. And by the way, Pat, in those 20-36 of ice time that MacKinnon was out there for, Cale Makar was out there for 16-28 of it. So he was out there for Bedard was out there with MacKinnon and Makar at the same time, and his line certainly held its own defensively. And think about who Connor's line mates are. A rookie in Ryan Greene, who's played 24 career NHL games. Tyler Bertuzzi, who's a great player, but he's not the fleetest of foot. Like, he's not a guy you put out there against MacKinnon and Makar. Sure. That would have been Andrei Burakovsky, who is typically Bedard's line mate. So he doesn't have his usual, guy. And who are McKinnon's line mates? Arturi Lehkonen, who's a really good player, and Marty Necas, who is
having an unbelievable season.
Just signed a $92 million contract a few weeks ago. And that line as a whole lead the NHL in even strength goals with 22 as a trio. So, I mean,
those stats are eye-popping, really.
If you're Kyle Dubas, or if just generally, I didn't leave that game thinking, Colorado neutralized Bedard. I left that game thinking the other way. Connor neutralized MacKinnon's line, and think about the chances that Bedard did create in that first period. I think Ryan Greene had 3 or 4 grade A opportunities that Bedard helped set up. If 1 or 2 of those go in, we're talking about Connor neutralizing MacKinnon while also getting a couple points in the process.
And don't underestimate, a game that's out of control like the Buffalo game, and watching how a player handles that. Connor Bedard, I think, was one of the best players on the ice in a 9-3 loss. He was back checking when they were down 4 and 5 goals, and he was playing like it was zip.
Yeah. In that second period specifically, it was one of those games where he was probably thinking to himself, my team doesn't have it tonight. I need to strap the team on my shoulders. And he was like trying to drag his team back into it. And there were so many opportunities that you could circle where Connor, that back check play where he defended, I think it was Peyton Krebs, he got a stick on it. He had that little breakaway. I mean, there were so many circle moments that Connor was trying to drag his team into. And so in that game, and even there's like a stats page out there. It's called Hockey Stat Cards, where they tweet out like game score, like player game scores. And the Colorado game, Bedard, number 1 among Chicago forwards against Colorado. Buffalo game, Bedard, best player for the Blackhawks. So these aren't games where, in the wins, Bedard is performing well. He's also performing in the losses. Yeah. So that's been the thing. So consistent.
It's been very consistent from, the first week of the season. The production wasn't there, but the effort and the commitment was, and it has been, 22 games of consistent play at both ends for number 98. I want to talk to you about one of his line mates, Ryan Greene. You and I and others had Ryan kind of pegged to be like the next Jason Dickinson, third line center, responsible, be the shutdown forward to put out against the MacKinnon line. High hockey IQ, can make some offensive plays for you, but that's not going to be his bread and butter, so to speak. Well, all this guy has done is gone from, he's going to start the season in Rockford. No, you're going to start the season in the National Hockey League. You're going to start you're going to play on pretty much every line but the fourth line. And then we're going to give you an opportunity to be on Bedard's line, and you've stuck there for the better part of 3 weeks to almost a month. And in the Colorado game, he's my pick to click before the game. I'll just say that. Just pat myself on the back. But he had, in that first period, he had 3 or 4 scoring chances and just some great looks. I have been thoroughly impressed. I know Blashill talks about confidence is a funny thing, but like you can see it on him. Just the way he carries himself in that locker room, talking to him about making the most of this opportunity. And he's been one of the bright spots and surprises for me this season.
Totally agree. I thought he was going to be a guy that spent half the season in Rockford and then was more of a mid-season call-up.
Yeah.
Just to get some grooming and kind of hone his professional game before he graduates to the NHL on a full-time basis. But for him, the way his season started, he is completely run with the opportunity. And for him to be bouncing around the lineup from the center position, I think he started on the fourth line, then he got moved to the third line, then he's going to the wing. He's been all over the place, and it feels like wherever you put him, he's performing well. And you mentioned that first period, my golly, he had 3 shots on goal, I think, and then the fourth opportunity, he missed it wide. And I wish I don't know if the broadcast caught this, but he just stared to the heavens like, he had 4 really good scoring opportunities in the first period. I imagine he probably didn't get much sleep on Sunday night because he was thinking about just burying one of them, knowing that it was a shutout, like the Hawks didn't get a single goal.
I know.
But he's been unbelievable.
And did you hear Blashill today say, his skill set is incredible for a guy that didn't put up gaudy offensive numbers throughout, his hockey journey at BU and other places. Like, he is like there's still some untapped resources there
for sure. And I think he was asked about this. Actually, this might have been just like in a conversation we were having. Like somebody asked, do you want to see Ryan Greene shoot the puck more? And Blashill said, I don't care about that aspect of his game. I just want him going to winning board battles and being a guy that gets other people the puck. That will eventually come, because when he's winning board battles and he's competing hard in corners or whatever, that's when he's at his best. But it was funny because he ends up with 3 shots on goal in the first period against Colorado. And so like he does have like a really nice shot, but that's the thing that impresses me the most is how seamless he is just transition. Like he doesn't seem deferential to playing with Connor Bedard. It seems like he understands what he needs to do to complement a guy like Connor.
So this just off the top of my head, and it's something we can maybe look into, but like, I feel like the Hawks as a team have had a lot of breakaways or mini breaks this season, and I don't think they've scored. I don't feel like they've capitalized on many of them. Just from the eye test, do you concur with that? Like McKay, I mean, like it seems like every game or so there's 1 to 2 to maybe 3, but I just don't feel like as a team they've been cashing in on many of those breaks.
Yeah, feels like Mikheyev has had quite a lot of them. I know last year it was Nazar getting all the breakaways.
Shorthanded opportunity, a lot of. He got some 5-on-5 as well, but a lot of them came on.
Yeah,
on the PK.
I think it's one of those things that it's encouraging that they're getting the chances, and if they continue to get those chances, at some point math is going to just start to tilt in your favor, and you're going to start to capitalize. But I also wonder how much of it is maybe some of the young players are getting these opportunities and they're trying to find out what works, what doesn't against NHL goalies. And maybe it can catch them off guard as well. Like, I didn't realize I just got a breakaway on playing against really good defensemen like Cale Makar or whatever. And it's like you're excited that you just got that opportunity, but now it's like, how do you finish that? And so I think that's something that Oliver Moore actually talked about at training camp this year. Is one of the things he worked on specifically this summer was finishing opportunities and trying to finish either breakaways or whatever, trying to get more goals, not to become like a sniper or whatever, but just how do I bury my chances that I am getting? So I think it's just a learning curve too.
All right, let's get into the officiating. Officiating gone wild. On the last podcast, we broke down the Bedard no call, and then the subsequent unsportsmanlike penalty for abuse of officials. Okay, so we beat that to death. In the game on Sunday night against Colorado, Tyler Bertuzzi was called for a trip. The penalty was announced. He went to the penalty box, and the Colorado Avalanche put their power play unit out on the ice. That penalty was rescinded, and a lot of it, talking to players on Monday, had to do with the reaction of the United Center crowd. And the officials gathered, came together, looked up at the Jumbotron, and they clearly saw that he was tripped by his own teammate and that it was a bad call. Now, this was also on the heels of a slash that I don't blame the official for calling it, because in real time,
Right.
You know, a stick comes down, another stick breaks. To me, it looked like it was a patented tripping. You slow it down and see like that stick was already compromised, and he did not hit that. You know, he did not slash and come down on it. So maybe there was a little bit of a makeup factor involved. But just your thoughts being in the radio booth, getting ready for a penalty kill situation for the Blackhawks, and then seeing Bertuzzi leave, and then Bertuzzi thinking that he was thrown out of the game for you think what Connor said was bad the other. I mean, I heard he was he set a record for MFs. So just take me through what you saw and your reaction to a rescinded penalty.
So I've seen many times where there's a borderline call and the officials will huddle up to then determine the call. I can't remember the last time I saw an arm go up, penalty get announced, and then did they announce the penalty? I can't even remember if they announced it.
They did. They had audio issues. There wasn't, because when he clarified that there wasn't a penalty, it wasn't very clear either. So I believe it was announced.
Okay,
but
regardless,
he was in the box.
I was going to say regardless.
Yeah.
Bertuzzi was in the box, and so I've never seen it get to that point. And even Steve Conroy said on the broadcast, he's like, I can't remember the last time I saw a penalty get rescinded like that. And credit to Jeff Blashill for giving credit to the officials after the game and saying, I'm glad they huddled up about it. But what made it so frustrating is how the last couple games have gone for the Blackhawks in the officiating department.
Yeah.
Like, these are not 50-50 ticky-tacky calls. These are, you watch the replay and you're like, that's not a penalty in any league. And it wasn't even close to a penalty. And so that's the frustrating part. And I imagine the frustration for Tyler Bertuzzi was heightened because, think about it, a month ago, he was part of the center of the controversy where he gets a goal taken away in the Vancouver game where it was a challenge. The Hawks end up losing that game in overtime or a shootout. But then think about what happened 24 hours prior, or 2 days prior. The Hawks are in Buffalo. He takes a high stick 40 seconds into the game against the Sabres. Now think about it. The Hawks get routed 9-3 in that game. Yeah. If the Hawks get a power play there 40 seconds into the game, and they capitalize, because the Hawks had like a 50% power play in the last 5 games.
Exactly.
Hawks score on the power play. They go up 1-0 in Buffalo. It's a totally different game. So now he's thinking, I'm getting penalized. I'm looking at the Jumbotron. Clearly, it's not a penalty. And when he left the penalty box, I thought at that point they made the decision. Well, they did make the decision to rescind the penalty. Mm-hmm. But like you mentioned, Bertuzzi thought he was getting the gate for a game misconduct.
Right.
I thought Bertuzzi was still giving it to the official even after they rescinded.
Like, he was.
So it's probably a little bit of both.
Because he thought he was thrown out of the game.
Yeah.
So he just thought he was getting a game misconduct, and then he was being ushered off when it was being rescinded, because he was going to the tunnel. Yeah. He was on the other side of the bench, like ready to head up, and then all of a sudden he started to sit down, and he was still hot as can be. Like, you had thought, like, maybe calm down a little bit once you find out, like, they said my bad. The other thing that we were discussing with Tony Granato and Kaylee Chelios on the postgame show is, so then you apply it to some of the calls and non-calls, and the Bedard hook or slash on the breakaway comes to mind against Seattle. Well, clearly the reaction in the United Center was as equal to what we witnessed on Sunday night. But the difference in that was the call was not made.
Right.
So you can't rescind a call that has not been made yet. So, I don't know. I was talking to a couple players today about it, and I'm like, well, what are we doing here? Have we opened Pandora's box? Is reviewing things kind of on the sly happening? Is the eye in the sky the best way to go? Is the final 2 minutes plus? Should it be under a tighter watch, meaning the eye in the sky, or everybody gets a replay? But then again, you also look at a call that's made with 4.5 minutes to go could decide the game, just as one that's called with 1:58 to go in the game.
Right. I've always been a proponent of why not have a fifth official as the eye in the sky, where if you miss a blatant call, you are on an earpiece and you could just send it down. Like they don't. The officials,
NFL does that, and I think it's really been fantastic. It's expedited things, and you see it happen probably 3 or 4 times a game.
Yeah, and
it's an obvious missed call, and it doesn't disrupt play, and they get in the air and they say boom, 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 and then all of a sudden, upon further review, the ball hit the ground. It's an incomplete pass, and they spot the ball and they're ready to go.
Right, and I'm not saying this for, hey, if there's a goaltender interference call, you have an eye in the sky. I'm talking about, hey, this was not a slashing penalty, or whatever penalty it is that is very clear cut. That's when you can have an eye in the sky just voiced out, because then it saves time, like you mentioned. Like in the NFL example, they don't even go put on a headset. They're just like, okay, we messed this one up. Like, let's just keep playing.
Yeah,
it doesn't disrupt.
I don't know. If it's a cost thing, adding a fifth official, or if there's a way. I don't know if you can do it when there's 13 games being played on a given night. But I don't know if you can have the Situation Room or Toronto or what have you handle this component along with their normal replay duties.
Yeah, and part of the reason I think why this isn't done is because the NHL likes to empower the 4 on-ice officials, but we're not talking about whether an official missed a subjective call or whatever, goalie interference, all this stuff. We're talking about clear-cut calls, and so if they missed it, it's like the NHL doesn't want to show up their own referees that are calling the game, but it's like, who cares about that? Just get the call right, because if this happened in the playoffs, you want the talking point to be like, oh, well done by the NHL to step in and get that right, not how we didn't want to show up the officiating crew.
All right, on Sunday's pregame show on Countdown on CHSN, we had NHL Insider Frank Seravalli, and we got into the topic of Connor Bedard's upcoming contract. And with this great start to his season, how that has impacted the negotiations. And here is my conversation with Seravalli.
Yeah, Pat, this thunderous start to the season for Connor Bedard has actually made life a lot easier for all parties involved, because with him not just being a top 5 scorer in the league, but unquestionably one of the top 5 best players in the league, he's put himself into a category that really kind of makes this relatively simple. If we're talking about an 8-year deal here, Connor Bedard is likely to land somewhere between $12.5 million a year and $15 million a year. And so, yes, a relatively big spread at this point in time, but it helps us set the goalpost somewhere between $100 million and $120 million bucks over the term of the deal. And in the end, because Connor Bedard has put himself in that category, I think the Chicago Blackhawks are going to be relatively comfortable knowing that the salary cap is increasing in a significant way, and they have so much space that essentially they just need to pencil that number in so that they can begin building the rest of this. And I think that's something that's also in the best interest of Connor Bedard to help surround him with the best talent possible moving forward.
There has been some talk that Bedard may not sign a max term deal. Do you think that's a real possibility?
I don't, because it's been a talking point. It's been a sexy storyline, so to speak, with Austin Matthews sort of being the one outlier. Then Connor McDavid obviously signed a really short-term deal to stay in Edmonton, just a 2-year deal. But outside of that, if you look at all of Connor Bedard's comparables, guys coming out of entry level, guys in that breadth of conversation, well, they're all signing 8-year contracts. They're all getting that first major payday. And then if you want to get creative after the fact, then make that so, but put the first $100 million or $120 million into your jeans and then figure it out from there. And so, yes, the Hawks would be buying all of Connor Bedard's prime, but in a way, if you think about it, it's best for him and best for the Hawks to just get down to that number. If you're assuming it's an 8-year deal and then figure out the rest from there, it's really essentially whatever Connor Bedard says he's comfortable with. I don't want to oversimplify it, but Pat, I don't know that the Hawks are going to be balking at whatever he throws their way.
Yeah, there's a lot of 98 jerseys fans here at the United Center walking around saying, like, just get a deal done, get it signed. What's the timeline for something like that to happen?
Well, Pat, even with this torrid start to the season, there really hasn't been much communication between the two sides. And I'm sure someone's going to clip that and they're going to say, oh, what's going on here between the Hawks and Bedard? No, they've perfectly allowed Bedard to get off to this very focused start to the season. Not only did he want to turn his game around after a disappointing sophomore season, but he wants to chase that Team Canada Olympic spot for the Milan Olympics. They're watching his game closely. And when you look at him and he's answered all those questions, the Hawks have just kind of sat back here and said, we'll assume that this conversation will be coming at some point. Kyle Davidson will pick up the phone to Bedard's representation likely over the next few weeks just to check in again. But it hasn't really been a focal point for either side, as Bedard just assumed that business will take care of itself if you get off to a great start, which, as we just laid out, most certainly has been the case.
So basically, Charlie, he says between 12.5 and 15 million, which falls in place of, like McDavid's AAV and goes, south of Kirill Kaprizov's 17 million AAV. So 12.5 to 15, that sounds about right. I would probably somewhere say between like 13.5, something like that. And he seemed to think that the max 8-year deal is what a player coming off their entry-level contract, what they would strive for. Because, again, as you look at it, Connor would be 28, turning 29 when this deal is up.
Yeah. I think it benefits both parties to do an 8-year deal because, one, you're not allowed to do an 8-year deal after this season. So, right, the max is going to be 7 years. But I think if you're the Blackhawks or if you're Connor Bedard, you want to make sure that the financial picture isn't not just a distraction, but that it's going to fall right into the competing Stanley Cup window for the Blackhawks. And if the Hawks have to deal with this again, kind of like right when it's open, then you have to make sure that you're carving out maybe extra money. Like, if you would have told me that these were going to be the numbers like a year or two ago, I would have been like, whoa, that's a lot. But yeah. But now, how significant the salary cap is jumping from year to year, the percentage of that is like, oh, that actually makes sense. Like $9 or $10 million a year or two ago is now, $12, $13, $14 or whatever. Like, I mean, the Alex Vlasic contract is just unbelievable for the Blackhawks. And maybe at the time it was signed, you're like, oh, well, that's going to be a great deal. But now it's like, holy cow, that's a really good deal. And so the financials are changing by the year, it feels like, or honestly, by the month.
Yeah, haven't we always looked at a percentage of cap to elite players?
Correct.
And 20% is the cap. 20% of $104 million salary cap is almost 21 million.
Yeah.
I mean, when you put it in that perspective and all of a sudden you're saying, okay, the player A is getting 14, you're like, okay, that makes sense in the overall percentage of the salary cap that elite player is eating up.
Right. I thought Frank made a great point too in that video, how he was saying Connor kind of graduating to that upper tier actually benefits all parties because the Hawks knew that he would get there, and Connor, I'm sure, knew that he could get there. But if we went into this season and Connor was under a point per game pace, maybe there's like a discrepancy in the negotiations because maybe the Hawks are like, well, we can't pay you this much money if he hasn't shown signs of getting there yet. And maybe Connor's like, oh, I'm going to get there eventually, but I don't have anything to show for it. So now you see Connor among the NHL leaders and you're like, okay, he's clearly that guy. And so it almost makes it easier now to iron out the negotiations as far as like, okay, what is the year? Like, what is the term essentially that the player wants? And then once they figure that out, it feels like they're going to be able to get to the number pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think this is, I mean, clearly Connor has benefited financially and will benefit financially from his improved play from last year. No question about that. But this is a win-win for both sides. This is the player they wanted, they hoped for when they took him first overall in 2023. It's the one that was highly touted and you had all these expectations and you're like, you know, will he live up to them? When will we see them? And we're clearly seeing them in year 3. So the Hawks have never had a problem rewarding great play with a correct financial commitment. They've done it to every player they had during the 3 Cups in 6 years, and it's not going to change now. So I look at I did find it interesting that they kind of took a hands-off approach, which I think it's kind of Kyle's MO. Like, he lets the player play and doesn't bog down his camp with negotiations and things that can cause a player to, I want to say suffer, but can cause a player to deal with added pressure. And so allowing Connor to attack the offseason the way he did, to improve in all the areas that he did, and then to put that on display at the start of this NHL season, and also, you know, do what they can to help promote him for Team Canada in the Olympics. I think it's been a smart approach. Yeah. Clearly it's worked for both sides. And now it sounds like Kyle will approach Bedard's camp in the next couple of weeks and see where they're at. Do you expect something done in season? I mean, to get to the 8 years, it has to be done before the end of the season, right?
Yep. I to wrap up your point there, these are the kinds of players that you pay. Yeah, you know, like you don't play hardball with a guy like Connor Bedard. Like, that's a guy that with Edmonton.
These aren't outliers. You know, this is he's achieved greatness at every level, and he's doing it here at the NHL level in year 3.
Right. It's similar to a situation of how Edmonton handled McDavid. It's like, you come to us with a number and what you want, we'll essentially give it to you because you're the face of our franchise.
That's sort of kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah, and so with Connor and why why it is an important deal to get done. Now, I shouldn't say relatively sooner, but just to want to know what the number is, because Kyle is waiting. Kyle is essentially, he can't plan the rest of the roster until he knows what Connor's number is, because that's the number that you make sure that you have the cap space for. But also, Hawks have a boatload of cap space, so that's not the problem. But it's more so when you're negotiating with other players, you're like, well, this is what Connor, our best player and our franchise player, is making. There's no way you're getting near that, right? So you can tier the rest of your roster based on what Connor's number is.
You wanted to get into this. I saw it on social media, and I'm going to let you kind of clear the deck on your thoughts on it. But some video surfaced on social media of Bedard being hounded by autograph hounds in, I believe it was Buffalo.
Yeah, it was in Buffalo. So you've probably seen the video, but it was Connor was out walking the streets of Buffalo with some of his teammates.
Bertuzzi,
Lafferty, Doc,
and
Slaggert, I think, was also there. And I think at one point Lafferty even said, hey, guys, he said no. And so credit to his teammates for kind of stepping in there as well. But there was obviously an autograph chaser that was hounding him for an autograph. And Connor was kind of like shrugged him off and appeared a little bit bothered by it, right? Mm-hmm. And so he was kind of relentless in doing so and asked if he could, if he can personalize it or whatever, because he wasn't going to resell it. But the fact that you got a camera rolling feels like your motives were a little bit different. And so Connor kind of caves, and then he scribbles on the magazine, which I thought was hilarious. But the reason why I want to address this is because I've had a firsthand look at this behind the scenes. Like, I've been on several road trips with the Blackhawks this year. And so I see how these things go, and I see the consistency of them. The true fans are the one that Connor will give a lot of attention to. He has time for that. He'll sign, he'll take pictures. I've seen Connor walk onto the bus, and he'll come off the bus after he sees the fans, and he'll go out and sign if the Hawks have if they have time, right? So I've seen him do that.
And at Fifth Third Arena, when there are a lot of kids there that are out of school, we have seen him have them pass down jerseys one by one, and he signs them and gives them back to them. And again, it's clear they are kids. It's their jersey. They're there watching practice. It's not a adult handing the sweater or the item to Connor to be autographed.
Yeah, and some of, in some cases, the fans there are just grateful to be in the presence of how, holy cow, we saw Connor and the Blackhawks walk right in front of us, right? And so sometimes it's not just about autographs, just so the true fans are respectful, generally. They're very respectful. They respect the space, right? But I've seen these autograph seekers. They are essentially at every road game where they camp out the hotels.
They know the hotel, especially in a smaller city like Buffalo, where there's probably two hotels that visiting teams stay in. They know it's one of two.
Yeah.
Same in Chicago.
Right.
And they target it, and it's obvious when the buses are out front. I mean, it doesn't take a detective work to kind of piece together the game plan as far as when you can seek out these autographs.
Right. And they will be there. Like, if the Hawks travel to a road city and they have a game the next day, like, they will camp outside the hotel the entire day and just try to get players to sign stuff when they're going out to lunch or they're coming back from dinner or whatever the case may be. So they are relentless. Fans don't do that. That's weird.
Yeah.
And so the example of the story that I wanted to bring up. So I was on the road earlier this year, and there were these herd of autograph seekers that were camping outside the hotel, kind of like a little roped off area, which is normal, right? But you could very clearly differentiate the herd versus the fans. And some of the players are really nice, and they'll go up, they'll sign, and then they'll go walk on the bus. Well, there was a group of guys that were I don't know if they were all working together or if they were all kind of just like, we're all here for the same thing, but there were a couple players that stopped and signed for them. Well, one of the guys missed one of the players because he was getting another thing signed, and he looks to his friend and he's like, "Hey, who was that?" And he said the player's name, the Blackhawks player's name. And as this Blackhawks player was done signing, he was walking towards the bus. Well, this guy he has a booklet of material. He flips to that page in his booklet, and he goes up and tries to run up to this Blackhawks player. Fortunately, the Hawks have great security, so he didn't get very far. But he was relentless, and he didn't even know the player. He just wanted to go sign the stuff so he can sell. And so it's just, if you're that guy, it's like embarrassing behavior, and especially to a guy like Connor Bedard, where he's 20 years old. He very clearly is communicating to you non-verbally and maybe even verbally that he's not interested. I mean, that you should respect the boundaries. And so I just wanted to differentiate that, because I saw some comments that were just like, well, how does Connor know that it was an autograph seeker? And it was like, I've been on the road for a few games, and I can detect them.
Well, first of all, to tip it off is they're recording the altercation. No fan is recording basically a stalk situation where you watch the video and you're like, well,
it's embarrassing for the other guy.
It is. But they come out out of nowhere almost as they're walking down the street. So the simple fact that you're recording that and putting that out there tells me what your motives are.
Right.
And then the dialogue he has it's every pro tip a pro uses if they are trying to get an autograph from a player who knows they're a pro, by saying, "Oh, I'll make it out to such and such person." That way it can't be just sold to anybody. Look, I feel kind of weird even talking about it, because I feel like we are giving that, whatever that handle was, we're giving them a platform, And when people aggregate the stories and they're like, yeah, this isn't, but this is already out there. And so I feel like in a way you're presenting the full picture of what life is like on the road and how they do allot time for the proper channels and the proper autograph seekers and things of that nature. But they have to draw a line somewhere when you've got these people that are trying to make a living doing it that way and not respecting players' boundaries.
Right. It's a great point. And I saw the original video go out both on Instagram and on X, and I had no intention on even giving it attention, right? But then when you see it just start to pick up steam, you almost feel responsible to chime in and make sure you're painting the picture in a proper light.
Yeah, I would say the first people that aggregate it maybe think twice about it.
Right.
But once that is done and Pandora's box is open, then it opens it up to the rest of the fan base and the people that cover this team, and able to put some perspective on what is now a viral video.
Right. Yeah. So I just wanted to share my road perspective on that and why you can pick it out night as day, exactly what they're doing there. And so, yeah, if that's just respect the players' boundaries. I think true fans do a really good job at that, but it's the differentiation between those fans and the autograph chasers that really kind of ruin it for everyone.
All right, we are we're steaming along here on this edition.
Well, we only got one podcast this week because of Thanksgiving. So we're doubling up our time here.
All right, so we're gonna do Blackhawks things that we are thankful for. All right, we both have a few. Do you want to start?
You go first.
All right. What I want to start with, I am thankful that Bedard's offseason clearly worked. Backing off in certain areas, training smarter, not necessarily harder, commitment to the 200-foot game, increasing his speed. It is all paid off. He has been one of the best players in the National Hockey League. It is a treat to tune into a Blackhawks game and know that you have an opportunity to see greatness at work. We were spoiled with Johnny and with Kane and Keith for so many years and all the different players to now have that opportunity on a nightly basis or afternoon to watch Connor Bedard do his magic. I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for the offseason he had because it has been incredible to see how year 3 has begun.
So we did not share our list together before we hit record, right?
No, we didn't.
So number 3 on my list was I'm thankful for Connor Bedard's trainer. Because of what you just listed. And obviously, Connor is the one that put in the work, and he had the humility at the end of last season to lean into, okay, I need to do something different because what I did last year, maybe just in the years past, did not work. And I cannot remember the last time I've seen this big of a transformation in one summer from a single player that is this early in their career. You know, like I've seen it maybe, like I mentioned, Patrick Kane when he was like 29, 30 years old, and when he went to Ian Mack and he kind of found a resurgence in the second half. But I've never seen this early in someone's career where they had to make a radical change like this. And so, thankful for Connor Bedard's trainer, but also the work that Connor Bedard did put in this summer.
All right, my next thing that I'm thankful for, and again, this isn't a shot at him, but I am thankful because of the way it worked out. I'm thankful that David Carl pulled his name out of consideration for head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks. And again, he is a fantastic collegiate coach. He may someday enter the National Hockey League and be one of the Jack Adams favorites and may win the award because he is the best coach in the National Hockey League. But I will say at this time that Jeff Blashill is exactly what the Blackhawks needed. They needed somebody who had NHL experience, that had experience teaching elite players, that had coached in an Original Six city, that had the wherewithal to hire assistants that he empowers and gives them the autonomy to do what they do, and to not over step his boundary and micromanage everything, and just being the true pro he is. I think the David Carl experience, while it may have worked out, it was an unknown, and you were going to hire yet another coach that didn't have NHL experience. And I think Blashill's last 10 years set him up perfectly for this run with the Blackhawks. So in a way, the number one choice, I'm thankful that it didn't work out.
I'm right there with you. Blashill has been everything that I expected him to be and more. And I think a lot of the players would say the same thing, how much of a breath of fresh air. And it's not a knock on any of the coaches that were prior to Jeff Blashill, but when you have a coach that can step inside the locker room and he already has that aura of a head coach because he's done it in the past, whether it's college, juniors, AHL, NHL, internationally, Blashill has that inherent, like, instant respect that he commands inside the locker room. And they immediately bought into Jeff Blashill, and I think we're seeing the fruits of that pay off on the ice.
What's your next thing you're thankful for?
I'll piggyback off of the way that you worded this and say I'm thankful that Seth Jones requested a trade from the Blackhawks because it allowed Spencer Knight to get traded to Chicago, and even
also allowed Levshunov to see NHL action last year, which probably would not have happened to the degree it happened, and more Rinzel, and so he opened up a huge spot in the top pairing.
Yeah, and this is, I'm not trying to dog. Seth got exactly what he wanted out of it too. So it was a win-win for both. So this is all water under the bridge, and actually Hawks would do it again 10 out of 10 times because
so would Florida.
Netted them Spencer Knight, who I knew that he had the potential to be a bona fide number one starting goaltender. You just see it in the skill set. He was drafted that high, calm demeanor, very mechanically sound goaltender. But
never flails.
Never flails.
Doesn't ever seem to lose the net.
Oh, I have actually a funny story. We were watching Morning Skate on Sunday, yesterday, and Spencer goes out there. He usually goes out there 15 to 20 minutes early to do his little routine. Mm-hmm. And Spencer is doing it 5 minutes into the morning skate. No one's on the ice yet. Maybe one or two players. He's doing his morning routine on the ice, and he slips and he falls, and he's like on his back, and then he starts doing snow angels. That's how he dusted it off, and then he got right back up. And he started in his routine again. It was like nothing had phased him. He was just go with the flow. But calm demeanor. Then you look at just some of the numbers. I mean, he's legitimately maybe been he's a top 3 goaltender in the NHL. Yeah. Like right now, if the season ended, he'd be a Vezina finalist. Like that's how great he's played. And so thankful for the return that got the Blackhawks and how that has really, I mean, we're going to look back at that trade and be like, that kind of helped launch the trajectory of the rebuild, is that Spencer Knight acquisition.
And my last thing I'm thankful for is the person and the hockey ops team that pulled off a trade like that, and that's Kyle Davidson and his group. I'm thankful for them, for the way they have rebuilt this team through the draft. They've prioritized speed and the game plan of acquiring multiple first-round and second-round picks, trying to hit more than just once a draft, and hitting seemingly multiple times in those first couple of rounds and into the third round. And we're seeing prospects at every level seeming to excel. And then they, I can't wait for them to get their opportunity. I can't wait for Nick Lardis to get his National Hockey League opportunity. And it's just been fun to watch. But that group and what they've done as far as the game plan and the execution of it, to me, if I'm a Blackhawks fan, I'm like feeling really good about the way my team has conducted their business. And as I've always said to you, I just want it to make sense.
Yeah.
I find more times than not, I say to myself, well, that makes sense.
Yeah. And it would have been very easy for Kyle Davidson and his staff to get so frustrated by how last year went and to maybe try to fast track things irresponsibly, but he held the course. Obviously, he made the coaching change, but there wasn't a significant player personnel change where they were like, all right, we got to give up future assets to bring someone in here to help. Like, he stayed the course.
Well, like this offseason, Burakovsky was the big move.
Right.
Grzelcyk right before training camp.
Yeah.
That was about it, right?
Right. Yeah, 100%.
Again, we look at the cash dumps. Dickinson, Burakovsky, and Mikheyev, all key components to this team, and all basically cast-offs from their last stop.
Something popped up on my timeline a couple days ago. It was like a screenshot of all of Kyle Davidson's trades on like the NHL Trade Tracker website, and the caption was, "Has Kyle Davidson lost a single trade yet?" And like I had to like really think about it. Like I was looking at each one. I was like, no, it didn't win, didn't lose that one. Didn't lose that one. Didn't. Oh, maybe he tied this one, but he didn't lose it.
Yeah.
So like there were a lot.
Like the Seth Jones one. Would you say that's a tie?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say advantage us because, well, look, they got a cup. So
Yeah.
and he played an important role. But when you get multiple assets,
Right. Yeah, we don't even know what that other first round pick's going to be.
We don't.
So it's like if it was just a Seth Jones for Spencer Knight trade, you'd be like, I'll do that.
Yeah, sign up.
But in addition to the first round pick, it's just incredible.
Yeah.
So we don't know what the Hawks are going to do with that yet. But he's been. I mean, the only one that was like, maybe is like the Patrick Kane one, but his hands were tied. Like the Rangers didn't have cap space, so obviously you would have wanted to get more. And Kane was on like one hip. So yeah.
All right. Is that
I was gonna have a third one.
What's your third?
I was gonna get a little sappy though.
Okay, here we go.
I'm grateful for the great Pat Boyle.
Okay.
The amount of messages I've gotten this year, how much people love this podcast. I think it's a reflection of you and I have built this trust and rapport with each other over the last 10 years, back to the Blackhawks Talk podcast days. And so I enjoy coming to work every day doing this with you. And I think the reason why fans enjoy this podcast is because we enjoy working with each other, and it's been such a privilege to do this with you. And so I'll always be grateful for our relationship and what this podcast has done for us. But I just love doing this with you, and that's why I think the fans appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I'm very thankful for our friendship and our relationship as far as working, because look, it hasn't been a lot of fun, at times over the last few years. We are having a lot of fun this year. I mean, and you heard Nazar say it the other day. It is about having fun, and I mean, like when you're covering a team that's having fun, it doesn't feel like work. But there are a lot of things that go into it, and it's a give and take of information. You may hear something on the road when you're with the team. I may hear something from a source. We kind of use it together and kind of go back and forth and bounce things off of each other, and kind of it's a nice way to get the full picture or a fuller picture of what you think the situation is when you trust the person you're working with and you're able to rely on the information they're giving, and there's a give and take.
Right, 100%. It's like, that I got your back, you have my back, and when we do exchange that information, it's genuinely, we have the fan in mind that we want to deliver for you. We want to get it right, and we want to make sure that we're contextualizing everything in the proper way. And so 100% agree with what you said.
So again, we're thankful for you guys for checking out this podcast each and every week. And that's going to do it for this edition of the Blackhawks Breakaway Podcast. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and we will talk to you soon.